Hi everyone, I'm Yvonne Villarreal, and joining us for today's Emmy Contender Chat is John Benjamin Hickey.
Hickey.
Sorry, I got ahead of myself.
I like the L.
Hickey. Like?
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
I'll give you one at the end of this. You can always remember that.
Oh, nice. He plays Dr. Frank Winters, the prickly but brilliant lead scientist enlisted to help build the first atomic bomb in WGN America's drama Manhattan. Thanks for joining us.
Very, very happy.
John Benjamin Hickey.
John Benjamin Prickly.
Prickly, yes.
Yeah.
I've
been called that. I have been called that.
I think that applies to Frank very much.
It certainly does.
Yes.
Yeah, he's nothing if not prickly.
He's very prickly, but that's why we like him.
Yeah.
And that's what makes him an interesting character.
He certainly is.
Yes.
He's the most interesting cat I've ever gotten to play. I mean, you know, he's equal parts trying to save the world, trying to bring Hitler and the Nazi regime to his knees. And that's, as objectives go for an actor, it doesn't get much bigger than...
That's like the end game
goal. I want to kill Hitler.
You want to kill Hitler.
And then there's the other part, which is all ego. Like, he wants to be the guy who has his name on this thing, which will be the greatest breakthrough in the history of science. So it's a really great, you know, sort of duality to play somebody doing all the right things for maybe some wrong reasons and all the wrong things for all the right reasons.
Well, talk a little bit about how this sort of came to be. You got the script shortly after doing The Big C, right?
Yes, I had just finished doing The Big C.
And you wanted to do a comedy.
I did.
I don't know if you know, but I don't think this is a comedy.
It's the opposite of that, although it has a lot of wonderfully offbeat, quirky, funny stuff in it. I had done 4 seasons of The Big C and had the best time on it. I loved that schedule. I loved how kind of daring that was, a comedy about a person with a terminal illness. And I was like, okay, I want to do that again. I want to keep exploring this world. And maybe a 4-camera. Jim Parsons is a great pal of mine. When I would hear from him how long his day was, like, wait a minute, you went to work at 8 a.m. and you're leaving at 9:30 and you make what? What's that?
I know, right?
Yeah. So I just wasn't, and I don't even know if I was particularly looking to do another TV show so soon. I was recurring on The Good Wife and I was loving that. And I got sent this script and my managers and agents said, we think this is really, really great. You should look at it. And I had already said I didn't even want to look at it because it wasn't what I wanted to do. So I kind of got the script again in the 11th hour. And sometimes I think that's really good for an actor to come into something towards the end of the process. I think it increases your odds, whatever those may be. And I met with Tommy Schlamme and Sam Shaw, who was the creator and showrunner, and Tommy, of course, the brilliant executive producer. And we had like the best. I was going to meet them for like 20 minutes. 2 hours later, we were talking about this time in our nation's history, the movies that we loved that were from this time that reminded us of the show. And I walked out of there thinking I would do anything to be able to work with these guys. And it worked out. I got it.
Well, and, what was your initial reaction? Like, okay, I can because I know a lot of it's based, for an actor, you can go off the writing to a certain extent.
Right.
But when it's science, do you feel like, I don't remember physics at all?
Physics. I was so stoned. It was physics. Science was after lunch in senior high. That meant only one thing in the 70s in Texas. You'd been out, eating tacos and smoking up. I'm sorry. It was a long time ago.
I think there's a drama in that story. Yeah.
I just think I've said this before, but I think it's safe to say that, people who are actors become actors maybe because they did not excel in the math and physics department. I know that's a generality, but I think it's kind of true for the most part. So it scared me. This material scared me to death. And I love that as an actor. I love being scared by something. And reading a script week to week, thinking, I have no idea how I'm going to pull this off this week. And the science part of it was the most challenging. But when you're dealing with, physics, theoretical nuclear physics, it's hard for me to say that, much less. You tend then to, it's sort of like if you're if your left leg is hurt, you favor your right leg.
Mm-hmm.
If there's something about a character you're playing you don't know much about, you tend to go to the things you do know about, which are matters of the heart and matters of, you know, like what is the thing that drives him that's based on the people he loves most in the world, or what he wants to do to help save the world. And you know, so that just means when they say action, you're finishing the physics equation.
Yeah, you've mentioned, I saw you mentioned something about Jim Parsons giving you that tip.
He said, just have them, as soon as they see you, you're just making the last, you know, parenthesis. You're doing the last, you're dotting an I or crossing a T. Don't ever have them show you at the start of a physics equation, because you'll be found out. Yeah. I'm sure he's mastered it by now.
What other research did you sort of do? Did you like read a bunch of books, see documentaries?
Yes, there is one. There are two movies, weirdly enough. One is the seminal documentary made about this time and place, which sounds like a dry history lesson. And if you see it, you can get it on YouTube. It is absolutely spellbinding. It's called The Day After Trinity, and it was made in like 79 or 80. And most of these physicists who were the architects of this bomb were still alive, so they were able to interview them. And you see their brain power, and you also see their heartbreak at having created such a morally, you know, ambiguous thing. You know, they were building this thing that would save the world, but ultimately be the thing that could destroy the world. That movie, and I read The Making of the Atom Bomb by Richard Rhodes. There is a plethora. There is so much great information on the, you know, fact by fact history of this time and place. And the other movie I watched over and over again was Casablanca, of all things.
Nice.
Because I want to be as much like Bogey. As I know I fail. We all do, but who doesn't want to be more like Bogey? I got the hats, man. Those hats. I fight for those hats. And also that movie is about sacrifice. And I think that's who we were as a country and as characters in this time and place. We were able and willing to make sacrifices for the love of our country that we don't necessarily understand as much anymore. There was no division then. There was no red and blue states. There was a country unified in this fight, and you were willing to give up everything and move your family to this remote, crazy, middle of nowhere location.
I was going to ask, like, do you think now that's something you could even fathom doing, and to have that sort of secret life that you have to keep hidden from your spouse, or, you know, and do you think that's something you could do?
Depends on how much you'd be willing to pay me. That's such a great question.
I can't keep secrets like that.
No,
I don't know.
I don't think we live in a world,
especially with social media.
Social media, and now our own relationship to the government, which you could argue was given birth in this time and place. It was the first government-sanctioned suburb that they put people in and put a barbed wire fence around the place and watched every move they made, because you have to also remember that most of these scientists who came there were all very left-leaning, some radically left-leaning thinkers. And so the government had to keep a very, very sharp eye on them. And I think that's one of the great things our show is about, that espionage. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, you know, to isolate yourself for the sake of a job or the sake of country and keep secrets from everybody you know and love, and really, really keep those secrets. I don't know if I could do it. As you can tell, I'm very loose-lipped.
How about as an actor? Is there some comfort, or like, do you thrive on being able to play a character that's where there's some like there's some fact to it, like there's some hindsight to a period from the past, versus playing someone where you're kind of like don't really have that
it's all fictional
bird's eye view?
Absolutely. I mean, I think one of the things you have to get rid of when you go into this job is 20/20 hindsight, or hindsight at all, any kind of bird's eye view, because these people didn't realize, I mean, I think they were painfully aware of the moral complexity of what they were doing, but they didn't, even they did not realize how large the genie was that they were letting out of the bottle, and how it was the birthplace not only of the atomic age, atomic weaponry, but kind of the birthplace of the business of weaponry as it you know, relates to our government, and you can make of that what you will. So you have to remember the innocence of that time. But I love the fact that our show is basically historical fiction. It's not a fact-by-fact retelling of this time and place, which fact-by-fact is the most fascinating story ever told. But
about the town.
It's about the town and capturing the emotional and psychological complexity of people who are being asked to make this kind of sacrifice and build this kind of world-saving weapon of mass destruction. It's, you know, it's so fascinating to be able to go back there, and then just to get to wear those clothes, man. All of that. It's great.
Do you steal anything?
I steal all the time. Yeah, I will be found out.
Is there an art to wearing? Is there an art to wearing the hats?
You go home and you watch, you know, Bogey, or you try your best to, you know, summon your inner Indiana Jones. He's down there somewhere. Yeah, you have great wardrobe people who are constantly shifting that hat, or you also have showrunners who, like, you can't wear your hat in the bedroom before you go to bed. You're in your pajamas. Take the effing hat off now, because if I could, I'd have it on all the time.
Do you find yourself wearing hats now? Like,
no, I'd look like an idiot walking down the street.
God, you gotta bring it back.
I know, I want to. Those guys from Mad Men, I mean, nobody, you know, those guys are like, and John Slattery's a great friend of mine. And I was like, you should get that hat. He was like, I would look like I live in Soho. It's 2015. I'm not going to wear that hat from the show. So, you know.
You guys could wear it in Silver Lake.
Yeah, I don't know. I think we might be a little old for that.
How about the parallelism of, you know, these people being brought to this town to sort of launch this project, and you guys as the actors and crew being brought to this town that they basically built to create this project for WGN? Yeah,
it's amazing. I mean, you know, let's not.
I mean, you're not building.
It's not quite the same level of sacrifice.
But like you're thrown in. And
no, absolutely. We think about that all the time. I mean, we're separated from our loved ones. We're you know, we live in this town, and for those who don't know, our set is this immersive, like, virtual landscape of the real time and place. They got 10 acres of the sort of back of this university, which had all of these outbuildings that had been built in the late 40s. So it looked just like Los Alamos. So they basically just retro outfitted this place. So when you go from your trailer to set, you're in the 40s. You open drawers and there are books of matches from the 40s. Everything is real. So it's a little bit like a Jurassic World, you know, it's like a Michael Crichton novel. It's like you feel like there's no escape. And, you know, you're used to, as an actor, filming on an interior soundstage, and when you look out the window of the LA Times, that's a picture backdrop.
Right.
Actually, that looks kind of like a picture backdrop. And, you know, it's just a photocopy. You know, here you look out the window and there's real air blowing in, which is wonderful for an actor to be able to breathe real air, and that's real dust, real tumbleweeds going by, real background, you know, artists doing their work. So it's immersive in a way that does so much of your work for you. So
I was going to say, did it affect your performance in a way you didn't expect?
Yeah, it's amazing how much, you know, actors need stuff to hold on to, whether that's a prop or whether that's a hat, you know, and this gives you just an embarrassment of riches to hold on to. Your entire world is there for you, and all you have to do is just kind of throw yourself in the middle. Yeah, it's great.
Let's talk about working with Sam and Tommy Schlamme, because I mean, I remember growing up, whenever I'd watch the Emmys, I would hear that name being mentioned in thank you speeches, and I was like, who is this guy?
Schlamme, so it's like having Hickey for your last name. Yeah. I mean, you know, not Hickley, but Hickey.
Hickey.
Yeah, it's I mean, you know, I knew him because of that funny name. That funny, great name. And also, of course, as one of the great masters of the West Wing, the man who, with Sorkin, of course, brought all of that to life. And he's just masterful. And the idea of getting to just be in the room with him, I mean, I was nervous when I met him because he's such a hero of mine. And what was so disarming is that he has no, he's a very powerful presence, but he's lost none of his childlike enthusiasm for creating. He's not resting on anything. He is still with his sleeves rolled up, as much down in the dirt of it all as any of the actors are. And then Sam is very, you know, he's young and so brilliant. And he'd been on Masters of Sex, and I'm a huge fan of that show. And just the way he described how they wanted to treat this world, Los Alamos, not just as a backdrop for these stories, but as a metaphor, like people having their own sort of atomic nuclear reactions to what's happening in their personal lives. I thought it was really bold and audacious. And it continues to be. It's really, really challenging, fun.
I like that you make that comparison about the nuclear reactions, because like these characters do have their moments where if they're too much in this setting, they might explode, or they're like, you never know like what particles will set them off. Or
Absolutely,
whatever.
Yeah. And you're not sure exactly what an atomic reaction is.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's a ripple effect to everything that happens. Everybody's on the verge of kind of going nuclear because there's so much at stake and so much has been sacrificed. You know, there were like 5,000 people living there, and there were, when they first were all there were 5 bathtubs. That was it. So the things you were asked to give up to come there was kind of unimaginable. And so I just love how domestically there's so much fraught in each relationship on the show.
We're going to take a question from social media.
Okay.
And it comes from Steven Schwartz, who asks
Steven Schwartz, that's the guy who wrote Wicked. That's his, maybe they're not the same guy. If you wrote Wicked, that's a great, and Godspell, you wrote Godspell.
He asks, is there a limit to what Frank is willing to sacrifice in order to remain a key player developing the first A-bombs?
Ask me that again. I was thinking of Godspell. Sorry.
We can reenact some scenes from Godspell.
I was in it in high school. I'd be happy to, yeah.
Is there a limit to what Frank is willing to sacrifice in order to remain a key player developing the first A-bombs?
Well, clearly in the first season, there's sort of no limits to which Frank will not go, you know, almost messianic in his zeal to end the war. You know, this is a guy who, I just think this is so fascinating. He was a guy who at 18, 19 years old, fought in the trenches in the First World War, because he's my age, he's 51 on the show. So he finds himself after that war that was supposed to have been the end of, you know, in another world war. Think about those men and women who lived through both of those wars. It's unthinkable. So and as I was saying before, I think it's a marriage of, you know, altruism and his own ego that puts him in situations where he's doing things to other people by any means necessary to achieve his end. And I think it even surprises him. I didn't think Frank thought he could be such a, can I say prick?
Yes.
Is that okay?
I was actually going to use that in there too.
Yeah, I mean, he's got a pretty terrible bedside manner. And you know, I think it's one of his flaws. I think it's why maybe his team is sort of the bad news bears, and, you know, their coach has his negotiating skills with the military. He's got a fundamental mistrust of the man because he had been there and done that. And you know, there's a very interesting story that, you know, General Groves, who ran the whole military side of it all, went to Oppenheimer and said, your scientists have to be in uniform. They're part of the military now. And Oppenheimer said, no effing way. These guys are, to put them, to put them, you know, you're like handcuffing them. You've got to let them be who they are. So that, you know, conflict is part of why Frank's leadership skills are a little wonky, because he can't help himself.
What was one of your favorite moments of the season? There's a lot of powerful scenes. The one with like early on with Glenn, like sort of discovering who he really is, was very interesting. But I don't know which ones sort of stick out for you.
I loved that. You know, I loved that because you have to take yourself back to a time and place where I think at the end of the day, Frank maybe didn't know. Glenn comes out basically as gay, and I don't even know if he actually says it. No, it's all in code, sort of. And, you know, this is a man who does not necessarily understand that about him, but has, and whether or not Frank thinks it's right or wrong, I think he's so past that, that, you know, you can't you can't put any of your
Right.
modern way of thinking. And I just love that. I loved that that Frank was accepting, but didn't know how to say it. Not even accepting. He just wasn't, he didn't have the time to go there,
Right,
quite frankly. And so therefore it became okay. I also, you know, I just loved the end of the season. Was, I think, my favorite. A, because I kind of remember it more because it happened towards the end. But B, that Frank ends up doing the right thing.
Right.
I kept going.
Because we wondered for so long, is he good or is he bad?
I kept asking the writers myself, you know, it's like, what the hell, you know, they're like, you'll just, and they loved keeping actors in the dark because then we're, you know, we're not bugging them so much. No, it was good to keep us in the dark because it kept us guessing. Casablanca, that's a great example. Though the great story behind that is they did not know the ending. And there's a lot of people who think the reason why there's so much tension and excitement in those performances is Bergman didn't know who she was going to choose at the end of the movie. And I love that. And then the fact that Frank ends up throwing himself under the bus as opposed to anybody else. He's basically thrown everybody else under the bus. There's nobody left. And does it for the sake of so many, the project, his family, especially his wife and child, you know, and his colleagues. I really was happy that he came through, and he's in just a heap load of trouble at the beginning of the second season as a result of that. But
I was going to say, how does it sort of lead into what we're going to see?
God, it's like, you thought last season was full of surprises and ambition. This season is like tenfold. Yeah, Frank is in a really big pile of shit. He's in a lot of trouble with the military, and that plays out in kind of a, I don't want to give any spoilers, but he winds up in the brig and in a very weird situation in a military prison that's reflective of our relationship to military imprisonment now, that I think is so exciting and weird and wonderful. So we'll see. And then he tries to find his way back to work.
Well, and the finale of the first season was sort of interesting because it was like more fast paced compared to the rest of the season. It was like a nice little jolt there. And there was an interview that Sam gave where he was like, he was asked, what was the worst thing anyone has said about your show? And he said, an unnamed network executive who passed on our show told us it's too smart for our viewers. What do you think of that? And then talk about, you know, it landing at WGN America, which is sort of trying to make a name for itself in the scripted world and trying to be known as a national player.
Who was that guy that said that? Do you have his phone number? Can I call him? Let's call him right now.
Let's call him.
I mean, I just think that's a profoundly stupid thing to say because look at what's on television. Nobody's underestimating TV viewers right now. It's this unbelievable new golden age, as we've all talked about again, where we're just saying earlier, now the conversation at dinner is not, oh, I have that new show, I've heard about that, it's on my DVR. Now people mention shows like, I've never even heard of that one. And that's the new show to see. You know, it changed the paradigm and the boundaries shift every year. And the WGN is a new one of those boundaries. They're, you know, their own pioneer. And, you know, it's like, you know, people find smart shows and we have a great devoted audience. And I admire the WGN so much for taking a chance on a bold, audacious, incredibly smart show that part of it is about nuclear physics, and casting a group of, I mean, I worked a lot. I mean, I was pretty familiar, but I'm certainly, you know, wasn't like they cast Clooney. I mean, I know I could be, but you know, they cast a group of an ensemble of actors who were the best people who came in for it or put their names in the hat for it. And they trusted Tommy and Sam to create a world. And I certainly believe, I'm biased, that we gave them a wonderful product. And so to anybody who would say that, it's like, well, duh, turn on television, man. There are so many more smart shows than there are dumb ones. And the dumb ones are really good too. We're talking about them earlier.
We were talking about that earlier. I think you should ask Sam who said that. And then
find him, kick that guy's butt. No.
I also wanted to spend some time here talking about The Good Wife, and just what is that like to, you know, be like sort of a lead on a show, and then like on the side also play this recurring character and not delving so deep into that guy. But
yeah. The last time I did it, I'd finished the first season of Manhattan, and I was like, I finished my few days of work, and I was like, was that it? Did I do enough? And because I had been working, around the clock on Manhattan. I mean, what a great job. That was just going to be one episode. That has turned into such a great gift for me, that show. As a matter of fact, I think Tommy said when I was campaigning for you to the WGN, it was all about The Good Wife. I had loved you on The Good Wife, and I showed them your scenes and said, this is the right kind of attitude we need for the show. So thank you to the Kings. This is how thick-headed I am. I was recently at an award show, and this very, very nice, incredibly courteous, kind of Midwestern-looking couple who looked like they might have been visiting from out of town. They turn and say, "Congratulations on Manhattan. We love it." And I'm like, "Oh, thank you very much." Blah blah blah, going on and on and on. At the end of it, I'm like, "My name's John Hickey." Like, it's Robert King, and I was like, "Oh my God," because they're two of the most brilliant writers on television, if not the right now. I think Sam would take his hat off to what they do, 22, 24 episodes. So getting to do the twists and turns of that show and getting to do it and then go home to my apartment in New York and, getting to work with Juliana, who I've known forever, and Bransky and Josh and Alan, these are all old colleagues and just the greatest ensemble. And talk about scripts you get where you're like, oh my God. I was on arguably one of the best episodes, which was Hitting the Fan, when they get rid of her.
I was gonna say, we need to talk about that. That was like
that probably was the best hour of television I had ever. I sat there and read it. It was like, I think that's the best even play I'd read in the last 20 years.
And you had so much power in that episode. You everything
really
rested on
fun.
you, kind of.
Yeah. And I had seen, that was my first time to have actually just met Robert on the set. He hadn't directed any of my episodes. And I just wish I'd remember him, because I saw him at the show. I was like, oh my God, you've given me, a career. Thank you, man.
Did you cry when they killed Josh?
I cried when they killed Josh. Yes, I hated that. But, I thought he has even said it shook the show up in a really interesting way. And he was so great, and they were so great. But now the show has gone in a completely different direction, and they don't seem to be firing on anything but all cylinders still. It's a show that just gets better and better and better.
And will you be back?
I hope so. I fired them last time.
I know, that's
so that's a problem. That could be a problem for me. But there have been several times when I've been in foreign countries. I was in Australia, I did a movie with Cate Blanchett there recently, and 3 or 4 people would come up to me on the street and go, "Chum Hum? Chum Hum?"
I love that name.
I know. They went through like 10 or 12 names before they could get approval, and they finally got approval on Chum Hum. And the first couple of episodes I did, nobody could pronounce it. Christine Baranski would be like, "So when you created Chum Hum," let me do that again. It was, a tongue twister. It's a great character, great job.
And I think you're working on the Truth Project, right?
Yes. I just finished this thing in Australia playing Cate Blanchett's husband. I mean, I would go to the ends of the earth, and I did. I went to Australia. Oh my God.
That sounds like a...
Yeah, she was amazing. And it's a brilliant script about the CBS News scandal that brought Rather down and his producer. Long before our recent,
maybe you could be in that one too when it
well, they'll tell that story, I'm sure. But it's Robert Redford plays Dan Rather, which is an incredible kind of icon meeting an icon, and there are all these echoes of all the President's Men in it as well. That is so great. And she plays Mary Mapes, who was his producer, and I play her husband. It's great, wonderful project.
Well, and now you and I are going to play Woodward and Bernstein and go down to the newsroom, because he's dressed very dapperly.
Can I be Woodward, please?
Yes. I mean, I think that's obvious. Like, you look like Woodward.
Well,
so
God, on that note.
We're going to make him write some blog posts and maybe a print story. So thank you all for joining us on today's Emmy Contender Chat. If you want to watch more, head to latimes.com. Thanks.